The storm had passed, but the sky still brooded with a heavy grayness that seemed to press down on the hills surrounding Asheville, North Carolina. Elaine Winters stood on the edge of her wide wraparound porch, one hand curled tightly around her ceramic mug. The coffee inside had long since gone cold, but she clung to it as though its warmth still pulsed through her fingertips. It gave her something to do with her hands, something to hold. Across from her, seated with the posture of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain, was Daniel Caldwell, her daughter's freshly minted husband. He lounged with practiced ease, one arm draped over the back of the wicker chair, the other idly tracing the rim of his crystal tumbler filled with still water and one precisely square ice cube. He wore a cashmere blazer, tailored perfectly to his lean frame, and beneath it, a powder blue shirt with no tie, a look that said casual but moneyed. Melanie, her daughter, sat between them, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She wore a simple white sundress, one that fluttered every so often in the breeze like the petals of a spring blossom. Her cheeks still carried the flush of the wedding 2 days before the lavish ceremony by Lake Lure that Elaine had paid for without a second thought, despite her reservations. Melanie had looked radiant that day, incandescent with hope and excitement, and Elaine had smiled through it all, swallowing her unease like a bitter pill. Because that's what mothers did, but now, just 2 days later, they were here. With papers. Daniel leaned forward and slid a thick, yellow legal envelope across the table toward her. It was bound tightly with a black clip. Her name was typed in capital letters across the front. Elaine C. Winters. "This is just something we thought would make things easier in the long run," Daniel said smoothly. His voice had that oily charm, the kind that had probably won him internships and favors throughout his 20s. You know, asset alignment, future planning, that sort of thing. Melanie nodded eagerly, like a student proud to echo the right answer. "It's just a formality, Mom. Dan's brilliant with this stuff. He's already helping his parents restructure their holdings. We figured it was time to start building something for our future family. The trust will make everything simpler." Elaine didn't touch the envelope. Her expression didn't change. Daniel, undeterred, smiled again. "Of course there's no rush. We just wanted to get the ball rolling. And since you're so well organized, we thought of you first," Melanie chimed in. "I see," Elaine said finally. Daniel stood, brushing imaginary lint from his lapel. "We're heading out to Napa for our honeymoon tomorrow. But this'll save time when we return." He reached for his glass, drained it in one go, and set it gently back on the coaster. He looked around the porch with faux admiration. "Lovely place, really. You must feel so at peace out here." Melanie leaned in and kissed her mother's cheek. "Love you, Mom." Elaine offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't open the envelope until after they left. When she did, she sat at the kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee that went equally untouched. Her reading glasses perched at the end of her nose, she examined every word of the document. It was drafted with legal precision, pages and pages of financial structures, diagrams, clauses, and footnotes. But it all came down to one thing: control. The document proposed that she allocate 65% of her current assets, including her property, stocks, and residual retirement accounts, into a shared family growth trust. The trust would be co-managed by Daniel and a third-party accountant out of Raleigh. Elaine didn't scream. She didn't call Melanie. She simply placed the documents back into their envelope, slid them into the back of a drawer in her antique secretary desk, and locked it. Daniel had no idea what he was reaching for, because Elaine Winters wasn't just a retired art teacher and doting mother. She was also the secret executor of one of the largest private inheritances in western North Carolina. What no one knew, not even Melanie, was that Elaine had inherited nearly $12 million after the death of her husband 7 years prior. Arthur had been quiet about money, preferring to let their modest lifestyle shield them from prying eyes. What little their friends and family knew of Arthur's estate was limited to a pension and an old hunting cabin. But Arthur had owned mineral rights across 3 counties, rights he'd quietly bought up during the 1980s and 90s, when few believed there was any value beneath the North Carolina soil, and he'd left it all to Elaine. Privately, trusts, shell companies, hidden holdings, she'd kept it silent. And for good reason. That night, Elaine called her lawyer. "Trevor," she said calmly, "I need a decoy trust. Something modest but legitimate. Looking. Traceable but uninteresting. With a fake trail. About, let's say, $280,000? Something spooked the snake?" he asked. "I think the snake married my daughter," she replied. He whistled low. "You want to spring the trap?" Eleni's eyes narrowed. "No," she said. "I want to build a better one." The following morning, she visited her private bank in Charlotte and made a small, traceable transfer into a new holding account under a legacy aliasure maiden name. She left just enough breadcrumbs for someone motivated to find it. Then, she waited. 3 days later, she received a flag from the bank. A login attempt. From an unrecognized device. Someone had tried to access the new account. The name used, Elaine Carter. Only one person outside of Arthur had ever known that alias. Melania. Elaine stared at the alert for a long time, her thumb hovering above the Report Suspicious Activity button. Then, slowly, she set the phone down. Later that night, while sipping a small glass of brandy, Elaine watched the front door. No knock came. No call. No apology. Only silence. The following afternoon, a manila envelope appeared in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a printed screenshot of a financial dashboard showing her decoy account login history, withdrawal attempts, device ID, and one handwritten note. "You don't trust family, that's sad." Elaine's fingers curled tightly around the paper until the ink smudged. She walked to her study, opened the locked drawer, removed the original trust papers, and she began to rewrite them. Only this time, she didn't include Daniel. She didn't include Melanie either. She included one name. Nora Carter. Winters. Her granddaughter. Melanie's unborn child. A trust for a future she could believe in. When Melanie called later that week, her voice was light, chipper, unaware. "Mom, we're thinking of stopping by after Napa. Daniel has some updates on the trust stuff. Hope you've had a chance to look it over?" Elaine's voice was calm. "Of course, sweetheart. Come by any time. I've got everything ready." And in her study, the trap waited. Not to catch, but to expose. The wine country air smelled of lavender and old secrets. Elaine's rental car wound its way along narrow vineyard roads toward a sleepy cottage she'd leased under the name Nora Cartera, subtle reminder to herself of who she had once been before all the lies and layers. She wasn't supposed to be in Napa, not according to Daniel, not according to Melanie, but she was. And she was watching. She'd arrived 2 days earlier, in secret, and booked a private cottage on the far edge of a vineyard estatin that coincidentally backed onto the exact resort where Melanie and Daniel were staying for their honeymoon. There were tall olive trees and no shortage of stone walls. But Elaine knew how to observe without being seen. This wasn't obsession. This was insurance. The day before, she had watched them laugh over oysters and sparkling rosé. Daniel had reached for Melanie's hand. Melanie had leaned into his shoulder, eyes bright, completely unaware of the plan he was nursing beneath his designer watch and tailored smile. Elaine had once thought herself paranoid. Now she understood that paranoia was just a word people used when you noticed the truth before everyone else. Tonight she watched them again, this time from the overlook above the resort's private garden. They were seated on the patio, Daniel speaking with animation, Melanie smiling politely. But when Daniel stepped away to take a call, Elaine noticed her daughter's shoulders slump. The smile faded. She looked out across the vineyard like someone questioning the ground beneath her feet. Elaine pulled back into the shadows. She was getting through. Trevor had sent her the decoy documents flawless, understated, with just enough noise to attract the kind of attention Daniel wouldn't resist. Sure enough, her private server pinged at 2:17 a.m. A foreign device accessed the decoy trust portal from the resort's guest Wi-Fi. Elaine smiled in the dark, but the smile faded as she opened the next message. This time, there was an attachment, an image. Her house, her study window, photographed from the outside. A note followed. We're all watching. Elaine didn't sleep that night. Her mind traced old patterns, drifted toward shadows she hadn't visited in years. This wasn't just greed now. This was surveillance. She picked up the burner phone and dialed Trevor. Plan B, she said. You sure? They've made it personal. He sighed. I'll prep the papers. Same distribution model? Number. This one is for leverage. Trevor was silent for a beat. Then, understood. Elaine ended the call and stepped outside. The vineyard shimmered beneath the moonlight, and the breeze carried the scent of lemon and dust. She thought of Arthur. Of the way he used to sketch family trees and circle names with quiet care. He had believed in legacy, true legacy. Not wealth, not holdings. People, the right people. She would not let her daughter be devoured by a man who only saw her as an asset. Elaine pulled her jacket tighter around her. Tomorrow they would return from the honeymoon. And when they did, the board would be set, and Daniel Caldwell would finally learn the rules of the real game. When Elaine returned to Asheville, the air had thickened with spring pollen and the tension of unspoken things. Dogwoods were in bloom, dotting the hillsides with bursts of white and pale pink, but she barely noticed them. Her thoughts were already steps ahead. She didn't go home immediately. Instead, she stopped at a quiet cafe she and Arthur had once frequented, tucked behind the city's old courthouse. There, she reviewed every line of the legal countermeasures Trevor had prepared. Revocable trusts, contingent transfers, a full record of IP addresses tied to Daniel's logins. Evidence, not accusations. She was no longer just a wary mother. She was building a legal firewall. That evening, Melanie called. Mom, we're back. Dinner at your place tomorrow? Elaine hesitated for only a second. Of course, sweetheart. I'll make your favorite. The next day, she cooked like she used to when Melanie was small-lemon roasted chicken, baby potatoes, arugula salad with pomegranate seeds. Familiar things. Soothing things. A ritual of love in the shape of food. Daniel and Melanie arrived at 7 sharp. Daniel brought wine. A nice bottle. Italian. He kissed her cheek with the same practiced charm he'd used at their first meeting. I hope this dinner is celebratory, he said with a grin. Elaine smiled. That depends on how the conversation goes. Melanie looked between them nervously. As they ate, Elaine asked about the honeymoon. Melanie answered eagerly. Showing photos. Sharing moments. Daniel interrupted with jokes and stories, but Elaine noticed his eyes flicking now and then to the study door down the hall. He was still hunting. After dinner, Elaine poured coffee and gestured toward the living room. I'd like to go over something with both of you, she said calmly. Daniel's smile stiffened. Of course. The trust? Elaine nodded and returned with a folder knot, the decoy, not the original, but a third version. A hybrid. She placed it between them on the coffee table. This, she said, is what I've decided. Daniel leaned forward, brows furrowing as he opened it. His fingers paused briefly as he scanned the contents. This lists Nora Carter Winters as the sole beneficiary, he said slowly. Melania blinked. Nora? Elaine looked at her daughter gently. Your child. Whenever she arrives, Melanie's face flushed. But, Mom, we haven't even… Daniel cut in. You're bypassing us entirely. No, Elaine said evenly. I'm protecting you. From undue responsibility. From mistakes, he bristled. It's not legal to cut your own daughter out of a trust. Elaine smiled. It is when the trust is revocable and the primary intent is to secure legacy, not reward lineage. He stood. So this was a test. Elaine rose to meet his height. It was a mirror. You showed me everything I needed to see. Melanie's voice cracked. What's going on? Elaine turned to her daughter. He tried to access my accounts, Melanie. Not once. Repeatedly. From your tablet. At the resort. I have logs. Melanie turned to Daniel, stunned. He laughed. This is insane. She's spinning a story. She's always resented me. Elaine walked to her study, returned with a printed log, device fingerprints, screenshots of login attempts. Would you like to see the timestamps? The IP logs? Daniel's face paled. Melanie took the papers, her fingers trembling. She read in silence. Then, slowly, she turned to her husband. Tell me she's lying, she whispered. Daniel didn't speak. The silence lasted too long. Elaine broke it. I'm giving you a chance, Daniel. Walk away quietly. Sign the dissolution papers. Leave the accounts. No charges. No press. His jaw clenched. And if I don't? Elaine sat down calmly. Then I send all of this to the district attorney. Melanie sank into a chair. I can't believe this. Elaine leaned forward. You wanted a future, Daniel. Now you get to build it, just not on my foundation. The air was thick, unbreathable. Daniel picked up his jacket. You'll regret this. Elaine smiled. I doubt that. He left. Melanie stared at the fire. Her voice was hollow. Mom, I don't know what to think. Elaine sat beside her. Think later. Feel now. And for the first time in weeks, Melanie cried. Elaine held her, just as she had when Melanie was a little girl afraid of shadows in the closet. But this time, the monster had a name, and he was gone. The house was too quiet the morning after Daniel left. Elaine awoke early, as always, but she didn't go to the porch with her coffee. She sat in the study instead, the fire cold, the windows glazed with the golden mist of late spring. Upstairs, Melanie slept in her childhood bedroom. Elaine had tucked her in the night before like she used to when Melanie was 8. It felt both comforting and hollow. A mother's reflex, a daughter's retreat. The previous night had left Elaine drained but not defeated. There was more to do. She unlocked the filing cabinet beneath her desk and removed a worn black binder marked Carter Holdings. It contained the true maptha, full ledger of her hidden wealth. Mineral royalties, timber contracts, bond portfolios under shell aliases. Arthur's legacy, preserved through quiet cunning and relentless planning. She placed the binder on the desk and stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up the phone and called Trevor. It's time, she said. He didn't ask for clarification. Understood. Full disclosure model? Elaine hesitated. Number phased. I want a sealed legacy clause. Triggered only upon death or breach of agreement. Trevor whistled. You don't trust her yet. Elaine glanced toward the ceiling, where Melanie's light footsteps creaked above. I don't trust what's still wrapped around her. You think he's not finished. I think he's just shifted strategy. That afternoon, Melanie emerged from her room, pale but composed. She poured herself tea without a word, then finally looked at Elaine. I read through the documents again, she said quietly. Elaine nodded. You were right, Melanie added. I feel like my whole life got rearranged while I wasn't looking. Elaine met her gaze. Sometimes people rearrange things quietly, so you don't notice until the pieces are already gone. Melanie looked down. He said all the right things. Made me feel like I was choosing. Like we were planning something together. Elaine walked to the drawer, retrieved a small notebook, and handed it to her. What's this? My ledger, Elaine said. The one with everything I've kept hidden. It's coded. But if you want to understand what's really mine and now yours, you'll learn to read it. Melanie stared at it. You're giving this to me? Elaine's voice softened. I'm giving you the choice I never had, whether or not you want to carry it. Melanie hugged it to her chest like a child might hug a favorite book. That night, Melanie stayed up late reading, asking Kiet questions. What does Kerr bonds 89-3 mean? Costa Rican government bonds, 1,989 series. Arthur bought them through a Panamanian proxy. And this account in Zurich? Elaine smiled. That one's for emergencies. That one saved us once. By midnight, Melanie was scribbling notes, connecting dots, chasing shadows. Elaine watched from the doorway, both proud and afraid. In the days that followed, the house became a war room. Trevor visited twice, reviewing lockbox documentation, digital firewall structures, and new clauses written into the estate plan. "You're preparing for something big," he said. Elaine looked out at the mountains. "I'm preparing for peace." A week later, Melanie received a package with no return address. Inside, a single USB drive and a typed note. "I know you're reading her books, but remember who gave you the pen." Melanie brought it to Elaine. "Do we open it?" she asked. Elaine shook her head. "Not here." They drove to Trevor's office. His tech team isolated the drive on a closed system. It contained recording clips of phone calls, private voicemails, and a video. In it, Daniel was speaking to a man with a blurred face. His voice was clear. "I can still get to her. The mother's just paranoid. But Melanie still wants a future, and once she has access, I'll make sure it flows through me." Trevor muted the video. "Well," he said, "that's motive, method, and manipulation in HD." Melanie looked ill. Elaine placed a hand on her shoulder. "No more secrets," she said gently. "Now we act." Trevor nodded. "Want to file a restraining order?" Elaine shook her head. "Not yet. I want to give him one more chance to walk away." That night, she composed a letter. Typed. Direct. With copies of legal threats should Daniel push further. With the USB copied and distributed to 2 lawyers and a journalist. Sealed. It ended with one sentence. "The next step is yours. Choose wisely." She sent it through Trevor's office, notarized, tracked. Then she locked her house, turned off her phone, and sat on the porch with Melanie. They watched the mountains breathe under a violet sky, the air heavy with coming change. The letter was sent, and silence followed. For 2 days, nothing. Then came a call. Unknown number. Elaine let it go to voicemail. She played the message on speaker while Melanie stood nearby, arms crossed tightly across her chest. Daniel's voice. "You really think this is over? That a couple documents scare me? I know how this works. Melanie's still legally my wife, which means I still have rights. You want to play lawyer? Fine. But I don't bluff. Not like you." Elaine deleted the message. Melanie was pale. "Is it true? Can he still claim?" Elaine shook her head. "Only if you let him." They filed annulment papers the next morning. Trevor fast-tracked the motion. No assets had legally transferred, thanks to Elaine's quick actions. The judge granted the freeze. That night, Melanie found an envelope taped to her car windshield at the grocery store. Inside, printed screenshots of her private emails with Arthur mails that had once been stored only on her old university account. There was a sticky note attached. "Want to see what else I can find?" Melanie crumpled the note and sat in the driver's seat, shaking. Elaine called Trevor immediately. "He's escalating. Digital harassment now." Trevor's voice was tight. "We'll file a digital injunction. It won't stop him overnight, but it creates a paper trail. Every contact becomes evidence." Melanie filed the request. Daniel was served electronically. His reply was predictably venomous. "You're paranoid, Mel. Elaine's poisoned your head. I never took anything. Never tried to. You were just too scared to build something real. Hope your mom's trust keeps you warm at night." It was the last message he sent. For 3 days, there was silence again. Then came a request. From Daniel's lawyer. A meeting. Elaine debated declining. But Trevor advised otherwise. Let him walk into a room where he's not the smartest man. Let him try his bluff. Let's end it. They met at a downtown mediation suite, glass walls, private security, and audio recording on every inch of space. Daniel arrived 5 minutes late, smug as ever, but less polished. The blazer was wrinkled. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Melanie sat beside Elaine. Her hands didn't tremble this time. Daniel's lawyer spoke first. My client is willing to sign an annulment agreement and withdraw all claims. In exchange, he requests a confidentiality clause. Elaine raised an eyebrow. He doesn't want his reputation touched? Daniel smirked. You've made up plenty. I just want peace. Elaine laid a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a timeline every login, every financial access attempt, each printed with a corresponding screenshot. Then, she added the USB. Daniel's smirk faltered. Melanie's voice was calm. You wanted peace, Daniel? Then sign and disappear. No clause, no rewrite, no handout. Or the next time we meet, it'll be in court. He looked at her, and for a moment, the mask cracked. A flicker of disbelief. Of recognition. She wasn't his anymore. He signed. The mediator notarized the page. The lawyer collected the folder without a word. Daniel left first. No words. No eye contact. Elaine and Melanie sat for a moment in the empty conference room. Then Melanie whispered, "It's really over." Elaine nodded. The bluff only works until someone calls it. They stepped out into the sunlight. The air was cool, cleansed, and for the first time in months, Elaine felt the quiet within her match the quiet outside. The days that followed were unusually still. Melanie moved back into her apartment in Asheville, though she visited Elaine often. They repainted the guest room together, converted Arthur's old office into a reading room, and hosted Sunday brunches with laughter that had felt impossible just weeks earlier. Elaine watched her daughter with pride but also a growing sense of caution. Healing was not the same as forgetting. One morning, as the dogwoods bloomed and the air smelled of honeysuckle, Elaine found Melanie sitting on the porch staring into the mountains. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "about how close I was to giving him everything." Elaine sat beside her. "Then think about how you didn't," Melanie exhaled. "You didn't have to fight for me." "Not like that." Elaine turned to her. "I did. And I would again. You're my daughter. Not my investment. Not my pawn. Just my daughter." They sat in silence. Later that afternoon, Melanie opened the ledger again. Not the original black binder but a new one. A fresh start. She began categorizing things under a new label. Legacy Trust. CW. She brought it to Elaine after dinner. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe someday I'll have a daughter. And maybe I'll teach her what you taught me. To pay attention. To plan ahead. To protect what matters." Elaine smiled. "You've already started." That night, the wind carried the smell of pine and rain. Elaine stood by the fireplace, a single envelope in her hand. Daniel's first contract, the one he'd slid across her table with that smug little smile. She burned it. One flicker, one flame, one final goodbye. In the morning, the ashes were gone, and what remained was hers.